If you want to be able to be more intentional with your song's chord progressions rather than simply using the same old stock chord progressions aimlessly, this is the video for you. In this video, we are going to talk about 3 super simple but important chord moves for every songwriter to know. So the most important chord move to know is probably also the most simple, but we all need to make sure we know it, and that is simply a 5 chord to a 1 chord. If you don't know what 5 chord is or a 1 chord, let me explain that really fast. So basically, in the context of any key, we can give chords numbers. And in our key, the number 1 is going to be given to the name of the key. So in C major, our 1 chord would be our C major chord. Then we simply move up the scale. Our 2 chord would be a D minor chord. Our 3 chord would be an E minor chord. Our 4 chord would be an F major chord. And our 5 chord would be a G major chord. We're simply moving up the scale, building our chords from the notes in the scale or the notes in the key, because C major the scale and C major the key are exactly the same thing. They both are just all the natural notes or all the white keys on a keyboard. So we're simply building the chords off of the notes we have in the key. Our C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and then finally B diminished in the context of C major. And each of these is given a number based on just what scale degree they are. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in G major, our 5 chord would be a D major chord. So we have G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major. That would be our 5 chord. So that's all that we mean by a 1 chord and a 5 chord. A 1 chord is simply a chord built off of the 1st scale degree of the key that our song is in, and our 5 chord is built off of the 5th scale degree of the key that our song is in. In this video, we're going to be using C major to keep things simple. So in the context of C major, a 5 to 1 chord move is simply a G major to a C major. So the reason this is really important is that the 5 chord is the number 1 chord that most wants to resolve to the 1 chord. 1 chord is very important because that is where our song feels most resolved. Most songs will end on a 1 chord. That's how you hear the whole, oh, the song is over, it's resolved. So just to show you what a 1 chord sounds like and what that resolve sounds like, we'll do a simple 1, 5, 6, 4 chord progression and then end on a 1 chord, which in the context of C major, again, is C major. See how that sounds resolved? And then we can make it sound even more resolved if we change the inversion. Same chord. Notice how resolved that sounds. But here we're talking specifically about a 5 chord moving to a 1 chord. And the reason this is so important as the most powerful chord transition is we can use this intentionally in our songs. Just in general, a 5 to 1 is used often throughout our songs. It's just a very common transition to make, a very common chord move to make. But they also can be specifically good for a really big resolve at the end of a song. We could have something like this. Notice how resolved and powerful that ending feels. And another place that this often is used intentionally is at the end of a verse, pre-chorus, or bridge to transition back into the chorus. So if your chorus opens with a 1 chord, which is the chord that's going to be named after a key, so C major in C major, very often if you have a verse that's going directly into the chorus to really make that chorus pop, they'll make sure to end on a 5 chord. Let's take a pre-chorus specifically because this is really often done in pre-choruses. Very often a pre-chorus will do something like avoid the 1 chord completely and just use 4 and 5 chords and then transition to a 1 chord for the chorus. So a pre-chorus might be something like this. And then that's the beginning of the chorus. Another simple chord move that I think every songwriter should know is a minor 3 chord to a major 4 chord. Honestly, I think this chord move is one of the more beautiful and also really underutilized diatonic chord moves that are out there. Just in general, the 3 chord, in my opinion, is criminally underutilized. A 3 chord is the least utilized of the major and minor chords in any key. In fact, Hook Theory did a study about this, and it's used way less than even the 2 chord. The 4, 5, and 1 chord are used the most, the 6 chord very closely behind, and then the 2 chord is used kind of sometimes, and the 3 chord is really honestly kind of rarely used. But a 3 chord specifically into a 4 chord is something that just sounds extra beautiful and a little bit mournful to me, and I just think it's a really great sound that we all should know. And you probably will recognize the sound, as it is something that maybe is underutilized, but certainly is still utilized. So if we're assuming the context to be C major again, our 3 chord would be C, D, E. So it would be E minor, and then our 4 chord would be F major. So the chord move is something like this. And then in context, it might be something more like this. Something this can be used for is some really beautiful tension and release. It's also generally great for any sort of resolution that you want to give to your music that actually moves up, because very often resolutions tend to go down. Now, part of what makes this chord move particularly powerful is also just that the 3 chord does pretty badly want to resolve to the 4 chord, just like the 5 chord really badly wants to resolve to the 1 chord. So you can utilize that to your advantage, knowing that the listener's ear, once you hit that 3 chord, is begging for you to resolve it to that 4 chord. It's also particularly great because very often you would maybe be expecting to go directly to the 4 chord, but when you go to that 3 chord first, it feels like you missed and you went a little farther south than you intended to, and then you have to sort of pick yourself back up north by going from that lower than you intended 3 chord up to that 4 chord that you really want to get to. So anyway, I just think it's underutilized. In fact, I think I did a whole podcast or a whole video just on the 3 chord and my love of the 3 chord. I just think it's so underutilized. So a chord move to know is that 3 chord to a 4 chord. So we've talked about 2 chord moves that transition fairly powerfully and sound fairly resolved. But how about when you want a song to change harmonically but not really feel like it's powerfully going somewhere? Because sometimes, even if it's just for a brief period of time, you sort of want to get your song to sound like it's not really going anywhere, but you still want to actually have the harmony changing. So if you want your 1 chord to go somewhere that doesn't feel profound, a great place to go is to the 3 chord or to the 6 chord. Or even more generally, anytime you want to change chords but make it sound sort of like it didn't really go much of anywhere, is to go up by a third or down by a third. So going back to our 1 chord example, going from a 1 to a 3 is going up by a third, and then a 1 to a 6 is down by a third. Now you probably wouldn't arrange it this way. It would sound something more like this, or, and both of those sound like they really aren't going anywhere compared to something like or. And in fact, this is very often intentionally utilized in stuff like video game music, where you sort of want to be able to loop the same song for like 30 minutes while you're in a certain area and not really notice that, hey, the song is played over and over and over again. If the song never really feels like it's going anywhere, then you don't really have that sense of, oh my goodness, I've heard this song 30 times, because it just kind of keeps going indefinitely. You also could effectively utilize this in something like the verses, where you have the verses really feel kind of static, like they're not going anywhere. And then when you have bigger transitions in the chorus, that will really help the chorus to stand out, because your chorus has big transitions like a 1 to a 4 or a 1 to a 5. But in your verses, you just sort of are hovering around that 1, and then 3, 1 again, 3, and then you could go up a third again to a G. Again, doesn't really feel like it's going much of anywhere. It is. It just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere compared to or. So that can be a great thing to utilize as well. Just take whatever chord you're on and go up by a third or down by a third. And by the way, if you don't know what a third is, basically just think, instead of going to the next note, go up 2 notes. So if you're in G major and you have a G major chord, going up by a third would be going to a B minor, because you skip over the A, go to the B. Going down a third would be not F sharp, because that would be a second, but E. So from a G major chord to a B minor chord, or a G major chord to an E minor chord would be an example of moving up or down by a third. So just as a quick recap, a 5-2-1 chord move is arguably the most powerful in all of music, and really sounds very resolved and really makes that 1 chord pop as the main center of gravity for your song. And then a minor 3 to a major 4 chord can be a very beautiful and frankly underutilized chord move that I think should be in way more songs. And then a 1 chord to a 3 chord or a 1 chord to a 6 chord, we're really just taking any chord and simply moving up by a third or down by a third can be a great way to have a chord change technically, so your harmony is changing, but it doesn't feel like it's really going somewhere. It doesn't feel resolved, it doesn't feel extra powerful. It just sort of feels like it is slowly shifting, which sometimes when used intentionally can be really great. So if you want to be able to easily apply all these principles we talked about, be sure to grab my free musical keys cheat sheet. It gives you all the notes in every major and natural minor key, and it gives you all the main chords in every major and natural minor key. So if you want to be able to easily apply these principles we talked about to all your songs without having to learn advanced music theory, be sure to grab my free musical keys cheat sheet. It gives you every note and all the main chords in every single major and natural minor key. So whether you're writing songs in E major, B flat major, A minor, or whatever, you can just simply look at what all your notes are and what all your main chords are, and it will give you every note and all the main chords in every major and natural minor key. So be sure to grab that, my free gift to you. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.